Mr. Hazell didn't have much choice. He had to make a run for it now. He started the engine, and the great rolls shot off down the road with clouds of pheasants rising up from it in all directions. Then an extraordinary thing happened. The pheasants that had flown up off the car stayed up in the air. They didn't come flapping drunkenly down as we'd expected them to. They stayed up, and they kept on flying. Over the top of the filling station they flew, and over the caravan, and over the field at the back where our little outdoor lavatory stood, and over the next field, and over the crest of the hill, until they disappeared from sight. "Great Scott!" Doc Spencer cried. "Just look at that! They've recovered! The sleeping pills have worn off at last!" Now all the other pheasants around the place were beginning to come awake. One or two of them started running about. Then all the others started running, and when Sergeant Samways flapped his arms at them, the whole lot took off into the air and flew over the filling station and were gone. Suddenly, there was not a pheasant left. And it was very interesting to see that none of them had flown across the road, or even down the road in the direction of Hazell's Wood and the great shooting party. Every one of them had flown in exactly the opposite direction. Out on the road, a line of about 20 cars and lorries was parked bumper to bumper, and the people were standing about in groups, laughing and talking about the astonishing sight they'd just witnessed. "Come along now," Sergeant Samways called, striding towards them. "Get going, get moving, we can't have this. You're blocking the highway." Nobody ever disobeyed Sergeant Samways, and soon the people were drifting back to their cars and getting in. In a few minutes, they too were all gone. Only the four of us were left now: Doc Spencer, Sergeant Samways, my father, and me. "Well, Willem," Sergeant Samways said, coming back from the road to join us beside the pumps, "them pheasants was the most astonishing sight I ever seed in my entire life." "It was lovely," Doc Spencer said. "Just lovely. Didn't you enjoy it, Danny?" "Marvellous," I said. "But how in heaven's name did you catch him in the first place?" asked Sergeant Samways. "How did you do it, Willem? Come on, man. Let me in on the secret." My father told him. He kept it short, but even then it made a fine story. And all the way through it the sergeant kept saying, "Well, I never. Well, I'd be blowed. Stone the crows," and things like that. And when the story was finished, he pointed his long policeman's finger straight at my face and cried, "Well, I'll be jiggered. I never would have thought a little nipper like you could come up with such a fantastical brainwave as that. Young man, I congratulate you." "He'll go a long way, young Danny will. You'll see if he doesn't," Doc Spencer said. "He'll be a great inventor one day." To be spoken about like that by the two men I admired most in the world, after my father, made me blush and stutter. "Well, thank goodness that's over at last," a woman's voice behind me cried out. This, of course, was Mrs. Grace Clipstone, who was now picking her way cautiously down the caravan steps with young baby Christopher in her arms. "What a gathering," she said, advancing towards us. "What a gathering we have here of rogues and varmints. Good morning, Enoch." "Good morning, Mrs. Clipstone," Sergeant Samways said. "How's the baby?" my father asked her. "The baby is better, thank you, William, though I doubt he'll ever be quite the same again." Sergeant Samways was fetching his bicycle from beside the pumps. "Well, ladies and gents, I must be off and see who else is getting into mischief round here." "I'm truly sorry you were troubled, Enoch," my father said, "and thanks very much indeed for your help." "I wouldn't have missed this one for all the tea in China," Sergeant Samways said. "But it did sadden me most terrible, Willem, to see all those lovely birds go slipping right through our fingers like that. Because, to my mind, there doesn't exist a more luscious dish than roasted pheasant anywhere on this earth." "It's going to sadden the vicar a lot more than it saddens you," said Mrs. Clipstone. "That's all he's been talking about ever since he got out of bed this morning." "He'll get over it," Doc Spencer said. "He will not get over it, and it's a rotten shame," Mrs. Clipstone said, "because now all I've got to give him are some awful frozen fillets of cod. And he never did like cod anyway." "But," my father said, "surely you didn't load all those pheasants into the pram, did you? You were meant to keep at least a dozen for you and the vicar." "Oh, I know that," she wailed, "but I was so tickled at the thought of strolling calmly through the village with Christopher sitting on 120 birds, I simply forgot to keep any back for ourselves. And now, alas, they're all gone. and so is the vicar's supper.